Okay, go.
Okay, great. Hi, my name's Jeff Craven. I'm the executive director of NAMTech, which stands for the National Association of Media and Technology Centers. With us today, we actually have a shared conversation. With us today, we have Shannon Miller. Probably really needs no introduction if you've ever followed any of her Twitter feeds or heard her present before. You know, Shannon has just really done some remarkable things, and I think one of the things every time I've heard her speak, and I just can't describe the feeling, because it's like knowing the area where Shannon came from and so forth. So many of us that work in education, it's like, well, okay, that's great, you know, it worked here, but it's not going to work in my school, or this is different, that kind of thing. And Shannon's really proof, I think, of the things that she was able to accomplish in a very small elementary school, that actually these kinds of things can happen anywhere. And I'm really excited. You know, she's been an evangelist for Future Ready Schools, and just really making a difference for kids' education. And I'm so glad that we have her on today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Shannon.
Thank you so much for that great introduction, and I am excited to be here today. I'm sitting in close to Van Meter, Iowa, and it is super cold today, and so I'm inside staying warm while my son is at school, but I think it's like 5 below zero. So I hope that the weather wherever you are is just a little bit warmer than it is here today. But today I'm really excited because I get to talk about my favorite thing, and that is the voice that our kids have. And just to give you a little bit of background behind what I do now and where I came from, I was the teacher librarian, and I'm going to talk a lot about that today at Van Meter, Iowa, which is a small district in Iowa. But now I left the library a couple years ago, and I am now kind of focused in 2 different areas of the country, one in the area of Van Meter, still in Iowa, and also in Denver, Colorado. And this is my wonderful family. I am married. My husband's name is Eric, and we have 5 kids between us, and so those keep us really busy too. But I also get to do all these fun things now. Even though I miss the library every day and the kids, I get to do things around the country and internationally too. I'm the Future Ready Librarian spokesperson. I also do consulting and speaking for a lot of different organizations like this, but also different publishers, and get to support some different ed tech companies too. And last year I was so excited because I even got to publish my first series of children's books, and these are all about library skills. And I'll talk a little bit more about those too, and how the kids were part of that as well. But it's been a really exciting couple of years, and I've been enjoying myself and just keeping really busy. And so you'll hear some of that as well. But the story today is really focused on what we did and what our kids really stood for in their education at Van Meter. And hopefully this will inspire you to do things like this with your kids. And, you know, just like you heard the introduction of me, things that we did, you know, in our little town of Iowa. So just to start, I'm from Iowa. I grew up on this farm in Shellsburg, Iowa, which is in eastern Iowa, pretty close to Iowa City, where the Hawkeyes play, of course. And I was lucky enough to grow up on this farm with a great family and a great mom and dad who always encouraged and inspired my sister and brother and I to be really passionate about what we loved, and our education and our creativity, and of course literacy. My sister and I were always surrounded by books, and she's also a librarian now in Amana, Iowa. And it was great growing up like this because my mom and dad really fostered our love for things. And my mom said I always loved to talk and to be busy. And that was something that I felt like, even though we grew up in the middle of basically cornfields in Iowa, we were lucky because they always encouraged us to really have the voice that we wanted to have. And so when I graduated from high school, I went on to college. I went first to Iowa State University, and I majored in art. And after 2 years, I realized that I wanted to also be a teacher. And so I went to the University of Northern Iowa. So I have a degree in art education and elementary education, and then went back to school, and I have a master's in library science too. But when I graduated from my undergrad, I actually got married right away, and I stayed home with these 3 great kids for 13 years. And I loved being a stay-at-home mom. I loved working at home. But when a job came open at our school in Van Meter, Iowa, first a job in the art room came open. And so I thought to myself, it's time for me to spread my wings and to try out a career also outside of our home. And so I applied for the art job, and I thought I surely had it, because this little town of Van Meter is very similar to where I grew up, about 1,000 people. My kids went to school here. It's, my community. So I applied for the job. I did not get the art job. So I was pretty sad. And the next week, a 5th grade job came open. And so I applied for that job, and I didn't get that job either. And so I was happy just staying home, and I thought I'm just going to keep staying home and being a stay-at-home mom and volunteering. And then the district teacher librarian job came open, and I knew nothing about being a librarian. But as my superintendent said to me when he wanted me to come and apply for the job, he said, you're part of the technology committee as a parent. You volunteer all the time in the library. You're super passionate about education and the kids. So I thought, well, I think it sounds maybe like a good fit. And so I applied, and of course got the job as the librarian at Van Meter. And so our little town of about 1,000 people, like I said, this is our school in our town. And we're also surrounded by cornfields in the middle of Iowa, kind of right outside of Des Moines. And in the school, there were about 600 kids, K-12. And so all the kids are in this one building together. And when I got hired, the library wasn't a place where the kids really wanted to be, and no one, including me, really knew what the library or the librarian stood for. But the great thing is that I had all these ideas, and I was empowered to do great things and to try new things and to follow my passions, and especially to have a voice in transforming learning and changing education. So I want you to think about your learning. How do you feel when you are asked how you want to learn and what you think is important? And what would happen if you asked our students what is important to you? So I did that when I got the job, and I thought a lot about my kids. I thought a lot about my own children at home, and a lot about the way that I grew up and how my mom and dad empowered me in my education. And so I want to tell you a story about Meriden, and she was one of my students that I really first connected with at Van Meter. And at the time, Meriden was in 4th grade. And about 2 years into my job, these 2 boys, Ian and Jack, they put on a conference in Iowa. And Ian, when he was in 6th grade, he started to come to my school, didn't even go to my school, started coming to my school and following me around and shadowing me after school, because he wanted to be a teacher librarian. And then Ian started following me to conferences in Iowa, education conferences and library conferences. And Ian looked at me one time and he said, I don't understand where all of the teachers are, all the kids are. And I said, well, this is a teacher conference, or this is a librarian conference, Ian. There's not going to be kids here. And Ian said, well, when I get older, I'm going to start a conference just for kids. And so when they were freshmen, they started the Iowa Student Learning Institute. And I love the tagline, this isn't your grandma's conference. And it was so great because the first year that they had it, they had over 400 kids join them on a Saturday in Waukee, Iowa. And Meriden was one of them that came with me and her mom, Lisa, to the conference. And I invited all of my kids, and two of different families came. One of them was Meriden, a student at Van Meter, and my other friend, Jennifer, she brought her daughter, Jackie. Now, Meriden, you can tell, even as a 4th grader, just by looking at her, that she was really excited to be there and super engaged in her education and really wanted to make a difference. And Jackie was the opposite of that. She was the student that we've also all had. And didn't like to go to school, didn't really connect with anything that they were teaching her, loved gaming, loved to stay in her room, loved things like Minecraft. And so her mom wanted to bring her to see if maybe she could get her excited about something else and get her out of her shell when it came to going to school and being excited about learning. And so during the opening keynote, I sat behind Meriden and her mom, and I saw her take pictures, and I watched that she was asking questions, and she was totally engaged in what was going on. But Jackie, like I said, she wasn't very excited to be there. But when everybody left the auditorium and it was time to go to the breakout sessions, I looked over and I saw the two girls sitting there, and they didn't know each other because they went to different schools. Saw them sitting there, obviously on their screens doing something. So I went over and I asked what they were doing, and I really was curious because it looked like they were having a good time connecting and just doing something together. And Jackie looked at me with the biggest smile on her face, and she said, during the keynote, Meriden helped me make a blog all about Minecraft. And then she went on to say, nobody's ever listened to me before when I've told them how much I love Minecraft. And she taught me how to do this during the keynote. I'm thinking to myself, here was Meriden taking pictures, asking questions, and also helping another student, another child, do something that she really wanted and she was passionate. And remember, these two girls didn't know each other before that. So it made me really just think about the day. And I was so excited just to watch as this girl who didn't want to be here at the conference just totally get out of her shell, and was so excited to share with everyone what she had created in the morning. And it was so neat because the next day her mom Jennifer wrote me a text, and it said, "Thank you so much for inviting us today. I feel like knowing you will change my life and Jackie's too." And we've all had messages like that. But the thing is that it was not me who did something that day. It was another student that really changed her life. And just by inviting them and having a place that these kids could come to have a voice and to be themselves and be in charge of their own learning really made a difference. And I think that Meriden's mom, Lisa, she said it all too. She said, it's great today because she's with her people. And I really reflected on that a lot, and I put that quote up in my library, and I thought about this day a lot because we always want our kids to feel like they're with their people. And after experiencing this, I got invited to do a conference online, and I thought it would be really cool to invite Meriden to speak with me. And I wanted to tell the story about how we can make a difference when we ask our kids what is important to you. So Meriden and I got together, and I was telling her, and she was really excited about presenting with me. And I said, it would be great if we talked about your experience, and we talked about student voice. And she stopped me and she said, why are you telling me everything we're going to talk about when it's all about kids? We should be asking, myself, and we should be asking other kids what we want from our education. And so I'm like, yeah, that's true. I should have asked you first. And Meriden said, not just me, but also let's ask other students around the world. And so we made up a Google form, and we sent it out on Twitter and on my blog and listserv, anywhere we could think of. And we got back hundreds and hundreds of responses from all over the world on what kids wanted from us as teachers for their education and for themselves. So these are the things that we heard. Let us be connected. Let us have experiences. Let us create. Let us collaborate. Let us have access. Let us make a difference. And all of them said that they wanted to be heard, and they want us to let them have a voice. So let's start with being connected. And first I have to start just with my story about being connected. And when I first was hired at Van Meter, remember, I was a member of the community and I knew all the kids, but the library was a place that they just did not go, and that wasn't a program that they wanted even, to be, or they even knew what would happen in the library, and the teachers included. And so that first year was just me building that community in the library, me building a place that was the heart of our school and became a place that everyone wanted to be. And so that second year, that summer before my second year, we started to talk about getting connected on Twitter. And I had been on Twitter, but never really used it. I'm sure a lot of you can also relate to this. And it was something that my superintendent and principal and curriculum director and we talked about, and we decided to get on together. And so we started to connect, and we started to tweet and look for other schools who also were kind of like us, just starting out and wanted to get connected globally. And so our first connection was with another school in Merton, Wisconsin, and very similar to us. It was a superintendent and a principal and a teacher librarian and also a teacher. And so we decided our first connection was just going to be me asking a classroom teacher, and the same thing in Merton, Wisconsin, to read a book together with one of our classes. So we decided to have it be our kindergarten teachers. And my cousin Krista, she teaches kindergarten at Van Meter. And so I went to her and I told her my idea, and I was so excited about it. And she looked at me and she said, I don't have any desire to do this. She had been teaching for like 20 some years, and everything was going fine. And so I came back the next day, and I kept coming back leading up to this day that we were going to connect, just really patient, and encouraged her. And I was so excited for us to be connected. Well, on the day, remember, she did not want to connect. On the day, though, that we had it planned, I did show up in her classroom, and she wasn't ready. She didn't have her projector. She didn't have her computer ready. So I said, it's fine. Let's just grab this chair. There was a big Tupperware container. I put my computer on top of it, and I said, just gather the kids around and we'll make this work. And my son actually happened to be in the class at the time too, Hagen was. And so I was so excited too that he was going to get to experience this. So we Skyped between Van Meter, Iowa and Merton, Wisconsin, and we read Where the Wild Things Are. And afterwards, I brought them to the library, and they all made their own little wild thing, and we brought it together using a tool called Little Bird Tales, and they made their own little digital book. Well, after school, and the kids loved it, and after school, Hagen came up to the library, and he was so excited for what he had done. But the thing that really stood out to Hagen, even as a 5-year-old, was what we had just done, where we had connected, and how we had communicated with these new friends and places outside of Van Meter. And so he got this book out, and he remembered there was a map inside. And Hagen said, Mom, this is where I live in Iowa, and my new friends live here in Wisconsin. And so I took him down to Krista's classroom, and I said, you have to tell Krista what you just told me. And after hearing Hagen talk about it and show him the map, she understood what we were trying to do, that we were trying to connect our kids and really connect them globally to the world. And so I started to talk about it, and I thought it would be a great time to start a blog. And so I started writing about it, and I started talking about it in our library, in our classrooms, in our school district, about how our kids not only had to have a voice, but that we needed to have a voice in what we were doing at Van Meter and how we were trying to change education within our building. And so I started a blog called The Library Voice, and I started talking about it in the library to the kids and anybody that would listen. And my kids were listening a lot more than I even thought they were. And I want to play this because this is one of the first connections really that one of our students had. And at the time, Maddie was in 7th or 8th grade, and she was, just to give you a little background before I play it, she was actually at home one day, and I didn't know this, and my phone rang in the office in the library, and I answered it, and it was this girl, Maddie, and she said, Mrs. Miller, this is Maddie Dara, and I just talked to the author, Amy Efa. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, what do you mean you just talked to the author, Amy Efa? And she went on to say, like, you had her on your blog, and you talked about how she had a blog and that she was on Twitter. And I want to play this because I was super excited, but also a little shocked that this had happened with our students.
Guess what? The coolest thing happened to me. One day while I was talking to Mrs. Miller, she came up with a new name for our library. It's called Voice. It's so that everyone can be heard inside the school, outside the school, at home, and in the library. So she showed me this website. It's called voice.com. And there's a blog, and then there's a Facebook page about it, and there's a Wordle. She showed me all these new cool things about it. Then I was on the page just scrolling around, looking around, surfing it, and there's a link called Author Link, and so I was really curious to see what that was about, and so I clicked on it, and I saw Amy Efa's name, and she was writing a book called After, and Mrs. Miller was reading that, and that's what she told me she was reading. So then I was like, okay, I want to read this. So I read it, okay, and then I started talking to Amy Efa, which was really cool, because I've never really got to talk to an author before, and so I felt very lucky that an author was talking to me. And one day I was homesick. I did a video conference with Amy Efa, and we talked about her book. And she answered questions that I asked, and it was so cool. It's like probably the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. And now there's a website called pointsofview.com, and you can go on there and you can check to see when the next blog is going to be or when the next video conference is going to be. And I thought I was really a really lucky person to be able.
So as you heard, that's what happened. That was kind of the first thing that happened in our library. And because I was talking about all these ways that our kids could connect and they could be connected and they could have a voice, and not only the things about their education, but the things that they were really passionate about, Maddie had connected with an author on her own and even Skyped with her. And so it made us think, it made us really put things into high gear at what we were doing at Van Meter, because we knew this was where our kids were. This is the world that they live in, and this is what they really anticipate and that they want to do, not only within their educational life, but in their personal life too. And so we started to talk about it even more. We started to plan Skypes. We started to talk through authors and illustrators through blog posts and letter writing and digital tools and all kinds of things, and not just authors and illustrators, but experts in other classrooms. And we were doing all these great things within our school. Well, one day, a couple months into this was only my second year of teaching, and I got an email from a place called the Shorty Awards. And if you're like me, you've never heard of the Shorty Awards, and it said I had been nominated for a Shorty Award, and they wanted me to come to New York to Times Square because I could receive this award that I was nominated for. Well, I had no idea what it was. I had been a stay-at-home mom like a year and a half earlier, and I had no desire and was kind of scared to go to New York all by myself. And so I told them I couldn't come, and I actually made up a little excuse because we had just had a tornado come through our yard, and it really didn't do too much damage, but I was picking up like all of the stuff one day when they contacted me, and so I used that as an excuse on why I couldn't come. So on the day that the Shorty Awards were announced, my family and I were able to watch from Iowa, and we were able to watch the live broadcast from Times Square. And so I want to play now what happened next.
All right, social media gives individuals the power to make a meaningful impact in their communities, and for the first time, we're presenting a Connecting People Shorty Award. It's created in partnership with Nokia, and it's given to a person who is genuinely bringing people together through the use of Twitter and social media with help from, by the way, Nokia Connects hashtag. The tweeting people told us, using that hashtag, who they think is making a big difference. And those are your nominees. The Connecting People Shorty Award goes to Shannon Miller. And as you see, the competition there was pretty good, so congratulations to Shannon. Shannon is a librarian, a teacher, and a technology specialist in Van Meter, Iowa. Now, one of the voters wrote this about Shannon. Quote, "She connected me to my favorite author, Amy Efa, who I now have on Facebook and talk to her often. I'm only 14. She's changed my life." Now, Shannon couldn't be here tonight because her home was recently damaged in a tornado. Now, not to worry, she says her family is fine, but in her words, things have been a little nutty while they clean up. So she sent us this video.
Thank you for following me as I globally connect students and teachers every day to their passions, others, and most importantly, to their voice. So as you can see from that, it still cracks me up. I was a little nervous and a little surprised that I had won this award. And as I sat there, I thought it was Maddie who said something. It was Maddie who actually wrote this to the Shorty Awards, and she had seen this on Twitter. And it really spoke a lot, though, to what we were doing and just really the simplicity on getting our kids connected. And the next day when I woke up, reading about it on the Shorty Award website, but also reading about it in other places like the Examiner and USA Today, I really loved it because it spoke for all of us as teachers and what we were doing to really connect our kids. And the article, it didn't even call me by name. It just said, from Conan O'Brien to a librarian in Iowa, Shannon Miller. And a few of my friends were kind of upset about that because they didn't mention my whole name, but I thought, no, that's perfect because I'm a librarian, from the middle of Iowa. And that means that anybody can do this. It doesn't matter if you're from a town of 1,000 people or a giant city. You have these resources now, and we can connect our kids to anybody that they want to throughout the world, and definitely to what they're passionate about. So this was just the start that would bring so much change to our school, our students, and community by being connected. And I started looking for these connections everywhere I went. When I went to ISTE the next summer, I met my friend Bill Brannick, and he at the time was a principal at the Archdiocese in Philadelphia. He's now the technology director there. And Bill and I thought, why not connect our kids, even though yours are in Philly and mine are in Van Meter, Iowa, and we'll teach a class together. And so we taught a class all year long called the Student PLN Connect, where the kids were not only using technology to create really amazing projects together, but also the power of connection using Skype and having these kids that would never be friends, never would be classmates if it wasn't for the power of just using the technology and the tools and the resources that we had and taking a chance and doing something different. And to see my kids, talking and planning and creating with these kids in Philadelphia was just really amazing. And when I went to Philly that year, I went twice, it was just like they were my students and that I had them forever as well. And so it was a really great experience too for me as a teacher. And the connections that we made just got more and more. They just became something that was secondhand to us. And this is one of my favorite people to connect with, Tom Engelberger, who wrote Origami Yoda. And I love sharing this story because, that was a huge Skype for us. Like, Tom Engelberger was an amazing author, still is. And what he became, though, to my kids is not just somebody that we Skyped with once, but he became somebody that was a friend of my kids and a person that even taught my kids different things. And so it really goes to show, though, that you can make connections with absolutely anyone. And one of my favorite ones is when you're maybe like a little reluctant or you're not buying into it. The story is really encouraging because my kids also, there were several who really didn't buy into what we were doing and how powerful connections can be. And one time a group of boys came to the library and they said, well, it's cool that you're connecting, but we bet that you can't connect with the creator of Halo. And so I'm thinking in my head, like, I really don't even know what Halo is, but I'm sure we can send out a tweet and see if we can connect. And once we set the tweet out, within minutes, Alan Murray, who's one of the creators of Halo, actually wrote me back and said, have your kids bring their game tomorrow to the library and we'll play. And if you think that you can get people to come to the library and get your kids hooked on what you're doing and what you're trying to do to transform education, this will do it. Because when I called that out over the intercom and the kids came to the library, what happened was I hooked them that day and they kept coming back. And so it was a great experience for all of us. And just to catch you up a little bit with what happened with my cousin Krista, the kindergarten teacher, she was one of the teachers who, she loved technology, but she did need my help and she wanted my help. And we did a lot of collaborating together. And one time she came to me, I think this was 2 years after that first connection we made, and she was getting ready to have a Mercer Mayer book study. So she wondered if we could connect with Mercer Mayer. And for those of you who maybe think you've heard that name before, I'm sure you have, because he's the author of the Little Critter books that we've all read when we were little. And he continues to be a great author of those books. And I thought to myself, there's no way I'm going to be able to connect with Mercer Mayer. But my kids and I, we made this great book, and we put it on his Facebook wall, and we wrote his publicist. And of course, we didn't hear anything. It's Mercer Mayer. And so about 4 months later, though, we were so excited when Mercer did write on my Facebook wall. And he asked us to Skype with him. And the day before, this is another story that I love to tell, because the day before, I was practicing with Mercer in my kitchen. And Mercer said, you know, I've never done this before. Nobody's ever asked me. And he's told me that since that is that nobody ever asked him, because I think a lot of times we're kind of fearful to ask people like this. Maybe we think that, oh, it's Mercer Mayer, or we think that they don't want to Skype. But you have to remember that people are on Facebook not only for our kids and connected through social media and their blogs and ways that are digital now, but they also are connected because they want to be there and they want to make these connections too. And seeing Mercer just minutes after we had our Skype and how excited he was, it really shows you that they're on these different platforms because they also want to connect with us too and make a difference. And as you can see, they definitely make a difference in our kids. The next thing is to let us collaborate. And when we started putting more and more technology into the hands of our kids and into our classrooms, we really saw the collaboration go up a lot too. And just to give you a little background about the technology, because I'm going to talk a lot about it in the next couple minutes, but the technology, when I first got hired, we hardly had anything. Maybe 30 computers that worked sometimes. Mostly all of them were PCs, maybe a couple old like Apple computers. And it was something that not until my third year of teaching, we went to a one-to-one program in 6th through 12th grade. And then in the last probably 5 or 6 years in the elementary, have put carts of computers, of laptops into each classroom, each like grade level. So like first grade would share one. And iPads into the hands too of the 4th and 5th graders, where they piloted iPads. And they still have iPads at Van Meter. And so I have taught with hardly any technology to just tons of technology. So that collaboration piece, it was really exciting for me because we saw not only the kids collaborating more, but also the environment changing in the way that we did connect, and the way that, you know, things like this where you would go into a classroom and see obviously that we were Skyping with somebody. Like I said with Tom, it became something that was just secondhand to us. And the collaboration wasn't just with people in our building. It wasn't just with other schools or other authors that were Skyping in. A lot of times I would use all these connections even to teach my kids and to collaborate with them to be able to teach them new things, and my teachers too. One example is when I was asked to integrate coding into the curriculum, and I knew nothing about coding. But I did know that I could collaborate with experts on how to teach coding and how to learn coding with my kids and my teachers at our school. And so Skyping with a company like BotLogic, it was great because they were able to teach all of us about the things that we needed to start coding within our district. And so think about who you can collaborate with. We don't have to be an expert on everything. We don't have to know all of these new things that we do, and we can now have an opportunity and a chance to actually connect to the experts, to the people who have written things, to the people who have developed things, to the people who are studying things, you know, in another country or place. And so it's really powerful to have those collaborative relationships with others. Another person or people that we need to think about is the collaboration that our kids do when they go home and how they collaborate with their parents and their families. And Meriden, when she was 9 years old, she was actually in the ISTE Journal because of all the things that she was doing. She was blogging and she was on Instagram with her mom, and her mom was interviewed, and it was so great because just hearing this and reading what she had said, it really made me think about how much our kids go home and they teach our parents all of these things that maybe they don't know, or that they want to know about technology, but thanks to their kids and how empowered they are, they go home and also teach them too. The next thing is let us create. And being an art teacher and being also just a teacher in general, I love creativity. And this was a scene that you saw in the library almost every day. And using things, you know, just art materials and their own creativity and recycled goods, that's my favorite thing. But we're lucky now because we have these vehicles with technology to show off our creativity in different ways. This is one of my favorite projects ever. And this little boy in the orange shirt, his name is Aaron, and he came to me one day and he wanted to connect with the author of the I Spy books. And so I was like, that is a great idea. And I went on to Jean's website, the author, and I saw that she would Skype with the kids. And so I wrote her and she said, I would love to Skype, but they have to create their own I Spy book first. So the kids brought materials and they wrote the pages with the classroom teachers, and we worked on the pictures and all of their little composites that they were going to add to their book in the library. And we brought it together in a digital book and we shared it with Jean. And so it was so great because on the day that she collaborated with the kids, she was able to see their pages and see what they had done thanks to how we put our book together, how it was digital. Well, we had this great Skype with her and they created this beautiful book, this I Spy Van Meter school book. And afterwards, Aaron, he was so excited about the project, but he said to me, like, it's all digital. And so once we look at it, will we ever look at it again? And so it made me start thinking about like how I could make sure that all these things that we were creating, even digitally, were saved forever. And so I started to catalog them in my library, and I would catalog things right into Destiny. So then when they looked up the I Spy books, they also saw the books that they created or the projects that they created over anything. And I started doing this for more and more things because then I knew that not only were our things going to be saved and curated, but it was going to be a great place for them to show off what they were creating too. Just like when Hagen, he was in second grade and Minecraft was blocked at school. But after school, him and his friends, all of the teachers' kids, would come to the library and they would get on Minecraft together and build these great things. Well, one day Hagen said, I bet if we build Little Bighorn Battlefield in Minecraft, if we show the superintendent and the principal that they'll unblock Minecraft. Well, sure enough, it was so great that they did, and this was something then that we were able to use within our school, thanks to Hagen and his friends and how they were determined to get that unblocked too. The next thing is to let us have experiences, and we're lucky because not only being a librarian, but even being a teacher or administrator, whatever you do in your building, we have all these opportunities now to really do things that are outside of just our community. Participating in events like Dot Day and Read Across America Day. One of my favorites, World Read Aloud Day, that's coming up actually on February 1st. And when I first started making these connections and these celebrations, I made it something that was super simple for myself and the teachers. And the first time we celebrated World Read Aloud Day, I actually Skyped from my office and I read to the kids in their classrooms. And it was great because not only did it show me how excited they were just to use that technology and to see Mrs. Miller on, somewhere virtual, it also made my teachers confident they could do this too. That if they could get on the Skype and they could manage their classroom and they could do something that was totally different from what they had done before, that it was time for us to even find these different connections with classrooms. And so over the years, we Skyped even more for things like World Read Aloud Day. And one year on World Read Aloud Day, we made 32 connections on Skype and Google Hangout to celebrate. And it took lots of planning. It took lots of planning too on the parts of the teacher. But this was a week that our kids will never forget, and that we will never forget either as teachers. I also used to think that when I Skyped and when I made these connections, that I always had to get something from other people. Like, we live in the middle of Iowa. What do we have to offer the world? And then I realized after this day that we had a lot to offer because we do live in the middle of cornfields in Iowa. And I was getting connected with my friend John Shu, he was a librarian right outside of Chicago. And we were getting ready to celebrate Happy Pig Day by Mo Williams. The new book was coming out. So John and I both made cookies, and we decided that we would Skype and share the book together. And John said to me when we were planning, he said, you know, you live in Iowa, maybe you could invite a pig to come. And so I thought in my head, like, that will be perfect. I know a family that has a pig, and I can invite Bacon, the pig's name, to come to the library. And so on that day that we Skyped, we read, and you can see the computer on the chair there. We read, and we had cookies, and we celebrated the book together, and then they brought Bacon to the library. And my kids, this picture cracks me up because my kids, you can tell, have seen Bacon before, and even though they were excited, they weren't like bouncing off the walls like the kids on the computer that the lady is holding. The kids in Chicago were so excited and just screaming their heads off because they could not believe we had a pig in the library. But I like telling the story because it just goes to show that you have so many things too to offer in your community. Your kids might be experts on something. Maybe their parents are professionals or experts on something that they want to share. And you have all these things around you that other places in the world would love to hear their stories. And so think about what you and your students have to offer as well. Just like my kids in, and not just my school, but other places around Iowa, we had so many opportunities to be involved in other things within education. One year we got invited by the governor to come speak at the Bullying Prevention Summit. And the next year, because the kids made such an impact at the Bullying Prevention Summit, they were invited by the Iowa School Board Association to come and speak to 5,000 Iowa School Board members. Now, think about the difference that that made. And it was a huge impact that these kids had on all of those school board members across the state on things that were happening not just in our school in Van Meter, but other places within our state too. And so look for these opportunities and open the door for your kids when it comes for them being involved in other organizations and events like this too. The next thing is to let us have access. And because we had all this technology and we were learning differently and doing things different, we had lots of access to things too. Things like ebooks and different digital tools and apps. And one thing that I wanted my kids to have access to, because they had access to this on their own devices, was using things like social media. And I wanted to make sure my kids were good digital citizens, that they were safe, that they understood how to, the rules and how to, not like advocating for them to say, get on it and use it if they were really young. But because they were there, I wanted to make sure that they were safe and that families knew how to keep them safe on Facebook and how to keep them safe, using Twitter or whatever it may be. And to know also the ages that kids should be using these things too. So one thing we did, one of the best things, was giving our library and our school access to Instagram. And I started an Instagram for the library and just called it the Van Meter Library Voice. And I had such a great time not only creating this, but showing my kids then how to take pictures and post them, because I wanted them to be able to understand, what to post, what to write, how to be safe. And also this became a scrapbook for what we were doing within the library. And I kept this just on an iPad, and I kept it on a tripod in the library so the kids then could pick it up and they could go take pictures of what was happening too, and then post them. And the only thing that they, had to post was either a picture or maybe just a really simple message about what they were posting. But it was great because, like, this is one of our second graders, and she hopped up on the table one day when they were making something for Dot Day, and all she had to do was post, "My friend's making dots today, we are second." But what a powerful message that was to the second grader, because she knew that she had a voice also in what was happening within our library and within our school. The next thing is to let us make a difference. And all kids and all people want to make a difference. And this is one of my favorite stories about kids making a difference. And it's about Hagen and his classmates when they were in third grade. And Hagen came home, and he had such a good time that year making rainbow loom bracelets. And I'm sure that all of you have seen these. They were really popular a few years ago, and they would make them with a little loom. And it was fun because the kids would come to the library and they would make them. And Hagen had just gotten a loom at home, and he would make them. But on the day that he came to me, he was so sad because his teacher wanted to get rid of them because they were becoming really distracting. And as Hagen said, even being something that was distracting them during their class and when they were doing their work. And so I told Hagen at the time, I said, well, you're going to have to figure out a way to not have them taken away and stop doing the things that you guys are doing with the bracelets. And so the next day, the kids, him and his friends, came to me in the library, and they said, we need your help because we want to turn this into a project. And that year we were trying to empower the kids to think of their own PBL project. And they wanted the project to be called Banding Together, just like the rainbow loom bracelets. And so they wanted it to be called Banding Together. And they wanted to have their teachers and me work together with the kids so they could develop a research project and also have time to create with their bracelets. And so the teachers went for it too, and we got together, and we never saw the kids so excited about their learning before. And these were third graders, and they were researching, and they were with partners, and they were making bracelets and bringing their bracelets to school, and so excited about what they were doing with this project. They even got into the model of inquiry. I decided to take them down that road because they were so engaged in this project. And we Skyped with companies like EasyBib and places to teach them not only about researching different things and entrepreneurship, but also how to research and create citations and bibliographies and all kinds of stuff that the kids had never done before. But because they were so engaged in this project and they didn't want their bracelets taken away in this opportunity, we saw that they're learning, that they were so passionate about what they were doing at school. Well, as they were creating, other kids in the school were creating too, and everybody was bringing their bracelets in that they were making, and they were so excited about what was going on in the library and within the third grade. Rainbow Loom even picked up the project, and they started to tweet things that were happening because I was writing about it on my blog. Well, two people saw the story, and they contacted us because we had all these bracelets, and we started talking about, like, what were we going to do with these bracelets that the kids were making? And so one of them was my friend Mark, and Mark used to be the superintendent at that school in Merton, Wisconsin, but he now is a missionary in Africa. And Mark said, I would love for you to send my bracelets, or the bracelets, to my kids here in Africa. So the kids were so excited, and we had a plan for the bracelets. And then another place reached out to us in This Together Media, and they wanted us to send the bracelets to a place that they knew in India. And so we had two places that we were going to send these bracelets to, and in This Together Media contacted us, and they wanted to start a foundation with our kids called Banding Together. And so they started a Facebook page, and they worked with a graphic designer to develop a logo that was going to go along with all the work that they were doing as they got their bracelets ready to send to India and to Africa. And so the kids were making charms for their little bracelets with another school in Georgia, and they were putting them on there. They were Skyping with a poet, Joyce Sidman, to make love poems to add to the bracelets. And they were so excited to send them off. Well, what was happening too is other people were watching around the world. And all of a sudden, to Van Meter, hundreds and thousands and probably millions of bracelets started coming to our school from all places around, all kinds of schools around the world, because they wanted to contribute to Hagen and to his project as well. And so when we got the first letters back, the kids really saw the difference that they made, because these letters from the kids in Africa and India, where these kids hardly had anything, they were letters of hope and friendship, and the difference that the kids had made just by sending their bracelets and by being really proactive and passionate about what they were doing and the things that they wanted to do and the difference they wanted to make in the world. And so I'll catch you up with Hagen and his friends in the next couple of minutes, but it was a project that truly made an impact. And it was one, too, that I saw that the kids just really wanted to have a voice. So I want to end by telling you just a couple stories about kids having a voice. And this is something, like I said in the beginning, that all kids, they want to have a voice. And most kids, they do not feel like they have a voice in their education, and they really just want to be heard. The first one is my friend Gunnar. And when Gunnar was in kindergarten, he was the kid that we've all had who doesn't want to go to school, who doesn't really care to talk to us, really super shy when he came to kindergarten. And I couldn't do anything to get him excited about coming to the library or what I had to show him. And when we were getting ready to do the Iowa Animal Research Project, which was a project that all of the kids did, whoops.
I apologize. We're trying to figure out what happened to Shannon. We'll be right back with you.
Also, if there are any questions, there's also a chat there. Please feel free to type your questions there. So when Shannon comes back on, we can certainly answer them as well. It looks like Shannon's having some difficulty trying to connect here. I guess just some just some of my thoughts for the group, and especially I've kind of found this interesting. I had the opportunity to attend several years ago a workshop presented by John Hattie that really talked about students directing their own education. Of course, I think that kind of really dovetails some of the things that Shannon was talking about, and I do think it's an area that is kind of scary because, again, we're asking students to make decisions. I think as a teacher in a classroom is probably uncomfortable, obviously, because that's just a whole different way of teaching and so forth. So I think that's a trend we're going to see more and more of. And I think, as Shannon indicated, I really like the approach that she kind of took there to involve students and especially parents as well, into the educational process. Angela, is there anything you have to add?
Just she had some wonderful ideas in terms of just how really easy it is if we let the kids take the lead for them to connect with people. And I think we don't give them enough independence to do this. And I think it's scary to do that. But I think the sooner we let them do that, the happier we're all going to be in the classroom. I'm sorry Shannon wasn't able to finish.
Well, on behalf of NAMTech, I'd like to I guess, are there any questions? We can certainly forward them to Shannon, have her get back to you. On behalf of NAMTech, we would like to thank you for participating in today's conversation. Our next year conversation will actually be held in 2 months. In March, we'll actually be talking about white spaces and internet and broadband connectivity. Again, something that also really talks about when we talk about digital equity. So again, if you ever have any questions, you'd like to learn more about NAMTech, you can find us on the web at namtech.org, namtc.org. And again, thank you for participating, and and thanks again for Shannon Miller for providing our keynote today.
Bye.